several ones. March the 7th is the one that
We'd like to thank everybody for showing up. For such a long time, we've had problems with apathy or voting public. It's just wonderful to see a room full of people who are interested in learning more about the candidates they're fixing to vote for. This is an important seat. These seats don't come very often. Once an incumbent gets in, they tend to stay in unless they do something really bad. So this is one of the most important elections we will have had here in Ellzey County in some time. And it's wonderful that everybody's come out. As we always do at Republican events, we always start with the prayer and the pledge. So, feel free to turn the volume down when it starts happening. Oh. Okay. So if I could have Billy Kitchens, would you come forward? She's going to offer our prayer, and you would please rise. She's the chaplain for the Republican women.
Thank y'all for being here. Heavenly Father, we're grateful for each one that's here. We're grateful for our candidates. We're grateful for our country. We ask Heavenly Father as we go into this meeting and questions are asked and answered. Heavenly Father, we pray that we'll have truth. And Heavenly Father, we pray that we'll have discernment. Forgive us when we fail you. We're thankful for this country that we live in. Thankful that we have the privilege of gathering together. And thank you for your travel mercy. For we ask all these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. If you would remain standing, Don Blanton. Don? Couldn't see you.
I'm on the back row. Okay, we're going to say the pledge to the U.S. flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. You may be seated.
I know the New Mexico.
I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. My name's Neil White. I'll be the moderator for tonight's debate. This is the second of 3 events. Last week we opened up the series in Ennis. Tonight we're here in Waxahahie. And next week on February 28th at 6:30 p.m. at the Midlothian Conference Center, we will conclude this 3-series debate. I want to thank all of the candidates, starting from my right, Jake Ellzey. Yeah. Burge. DJ Fabby. Yeah. I want to thank all of these gentlemen. I'm standing right. I want to thank all of these gentlemen for giving up their time and their service and wanting to make a difference in our state, and it's very much appreciated. And I very much appreciate all of you for coming out here tonight and listening to what they have to say, because on January 1st of next year, one of these men is going to be representing us in Austin in the legislature. So, very important decision. As I mentioned earlier, this is the first of 3 debates. I came up with the questions for all 3 of the debates. They don't know what I'm about to ask. They didn't know last week, nor will they know next week what I did. What I've tried to do is come up with questions, I don't want to say that's hard, but deep. Because when one of these gentlemen get to Austin next year, they're going to be facing these issues that you can't answer with a push-cart campaign slogan. They require deep thought and have heavy impact on the lives of a lot of Texans, not only immediately, but in some cases for years in the future. So they require a lot of thought. And with that said, let me explain the format. They drew for position, and we're going to start off with Jake speaking first, followed by each one of the candidates. The first speaker for each candidate will get 3 minutes for a response, followed by 2 minutes for the other 3. Then we're going to rotate. John Wray will get the second question at 3 minutes, and the rest of the candidates will get 2, and so on and so on. As we wrap up the 8 schedule questions. We'll take questions from the audience as time permits, and then the candidates will get a final statement portion. And then all of them, last week anyway, have agreed to be here after the event to do one-on-one greeting. I'm assuming the same for tonight. All of them are staying, so as soon as the formal program is over, please come up and talk to them individually, ask them whatever you'd like, because this is the opportunity to get to know your next state representative, which is going to be one of these 4 men. So, that said, we're going to start tonight's questions. First question. We will begin tonight in an area that all 4 candidates have asked to talk about. Since the landmark 1973 Supreme Court ruling on Roe v. Wade, abortion has been legal in the United States. This is a multi-part question. First, what is your stand on abortion? Second, as a state lawmaker, as all 4 of you have stated pro-life position, what would you do within the legislature to limit and/or eliminate abortion in Texas? And how can this be achieved within the scope of states' rights? Or rather, how can you do this without having Roe v. Wade overturned in the Supreme Court?
Thank you, Neil. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jake Ellzey. I'm honored to be here today. I'm glad to see we're overflowing and everybody's back in the back standing up. It's exciting to be here and be doing this for the first time in 22 years in this district. And I hope that we represent ourselves well tonight, and whoever goes down to Austin will represent you well down there, and will make you proud. So that was a 14-part question, it seemed like. It's not going to take me 3 minutes, and it probably won't take anybody else 3 minutes as well. I'm pro-life from conception. Part 2. What would I do within the scope of my job down in Austin to not impinge on Roe v. Wade, but from the states' rights perspective, do as much as we can to be pro-life? Well, I think House Bill 2 was a good start. That was a good start. 20 weeks is a good start. We got to keep pushing. Rome wasn't built in a day. This wasn't broken down in a day. But can there be any other question about when life starts? I don't think so. My faith tells me no. So from my perspective, we keep pushing, and we work with pro-life coalitions down in Austin who have been doing this for a long, long time. We work together, and we work with people from the community in order to push a pro-life agenda. It's incumbent as a moral question for us as human beings that we eliminate abortion. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you. I echo Jake's thoughts, and it's good to see a nice crowd here tonight. I too am pro-life from conception. I completely agree with that. I want to protect human life. I want to protect children that are unborn. And I am, to my knowledge, I'm the only candidate endorsed by a couple of pro-life groups. I'm endorsed by LifePAC. I'm also endorsed by the Texas Alliance for Life. As far as what we do to protect our ability to preserve life and to promote pro-life in Texas, we have to be strategic about it. We have federal case law, we have federal courts that are going to give us a hard time on this, and we have to be strategic and look at Roe versus Wade. One of the ways that Roe versus Wade is attackable is that the U.S. Supreme Court back in 1973 kind of left open the issue of when life begins. And there's some verbiage in that case that suggests that if state law defines when life begins, that the federal court system might defer to that. But that has not been adequately tested through the federal court system. There are some states that, and national pro-life groups advocating what's called a Life Begins at Conception Act. That's what we need to do in Texas. I believe we have some variations of that. We need to strengthen it. We need to strengthen Life Begins at Conception and define that in Texas law. We need to do it in a way that empowers the Texas Attorney General to fight Roe versus Wade. We need to give him the resources he needs to do that. And we need to keep pushing the envelope on this issue to win back our rights from an overreaching federal government when it comes to the pro-life issue. Thank
you. My name is Burge, and like all 4 of us here, I am pro-life. And I have been since I was a little bitty pro-life people okay? I was born alive. I do think that HB2 was a great step, and I agree with John, I agree with Jake, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to agree with TJ here, that we need to do a little bit more on HB2. What I liked about HB2 was it allowed us to define some of the mechanisms that Roe v. Wade actually occurred. It allowed us to get into the health question and protecting the health. In other words, it gave us some positive impact, which allowed us to limit the number of abortions in the state of Texas. And when they do occur legally under Roe v. Wade as it exists right now, we're able to control that and able to move it more into a hospital-type setting. So the limitations under HB2, I think, were a good step. I also agree with John that right now, in lieu of overturning Roe v. Wade, the only attack we have is in the definition of life. When does life begin? And I think the scientific community is working with us on this, and I think that eventually we're going to get this thing overturned. Thank you.
My name is TJ Fabby. Okay, let's discuss life. When an egg is fertilized, you have life. It's a human life. It's not another species. And if we let it continue, it will turn into a human being that walks and talks just like all of us. And I don't know where we came up with the notion that the government could decide that some human life is worthy of protection under the law, but others are not. I'm very, very pro-life, not just in my words, but in my actions. I volunteer, I donate money to First Look, a life-affirming clinic here in Waxahahie. I take part in the Life Chain every year, up and down 77. Some of you may have seen it. And went down this past session and testified and rallied on behalf of HB2. And I want to continue that. But it's not just because of my faith. Obviously, my faith tells me that I need to be pro-life. The science tells us that we need to be pro-life. The smallest form of identification for human beings is DNA. And when that egg is fertilized, it has its own DNA. That means that it is a person in itself. It's not part of the mother. It is a person in itself. And I want to introduce a bill in Texas that would define that life by defining the DNA of that human being. That's what I'll do. Thank you.
Second question. In politics, like physics, every action has an equal yet opposite reaction. Should the legislature be successful in limiting or eliminating women's access to abortion in Texas, as a lawmaker, what safety net provisions would you support to ensure that all women and their infant children, especially those socioeconomically challenged, have adequate access to health care, nutrition, and support programs to become productive, successful citizens and not fall through the cracks? John, you're up first.
Sorry, I forgot for a moment that I get to speak first. Number one, I believe that all things flow from a good economy. I think that as long as people can have a job, if they can have a job, they can afford a place to live, they can afford a meal, they can afford health care. So what I want to do is promote and protect Texas's pro-business economy. I firmly believe in the situation that all good things flow from that. And if mom and dad have a job, they're going to stay together. The number one thing that couples fight about is money. If we can make sure mom and dad both have a job and they're not exhausted from having to work 3 jobs, that's going to take stress out of their marriage. They're going to stay together. That's going to promote traditional family values. Number 2, I want to make sure we have a great public education system so that people are prepared to enter the economy and prepared to join the workforce and that they can support themselves. Okay? I believe that that's the second most important thing to keeping people off entitlement programs and to make sure that folks facing unplanned pregnancies are able to deal with those pregnancies. Number 3, I want to make sure that we have a system in Texas that makes adoption easy, affordable, dependable, recognizable, and that we don't have any gotchas or unexpected results out of the adoption process in Texas. And I think we can improve that and keep that streamlined so that adoption is, of course, the loving pro-life option for those who are facing an unwanted pregnancy or unexpected pregnancy. I don't think there really is any unwanted pregnancies, because I think that pregnancy is a creation of God, and we need to honor that and follow through with that. So those are the things that I would do to ensure that this scenario is properly addressed in the state of Texas. Thank you.
I agree with John that the economy is one of the driving engines on this. And he is correct, and we all understand this intellectually, that if you have a job and if you're making money, then you should have, or you will have, access to health insurance. So that guarantees what we have. Now, the question also had a safety net in there. What type of safety net should we provide? And while I do believe that as a society, we have a moral obligation to have some form of safety net for the folks that are least able to get access to the system, I don't believe in the system we have right now. The system we have right now, for example, in the states in the United States, thankfully it's not Texas, but in 35 of the states, you make more money on welfare than you do at minimum wage. In New York, you have to make $22 an hour to equal what you get on welfare. So this is the thing that we need to attack, is the economy. And I think I'm going to take it one step further and say that our economy comes from a great educational system. It comes from our kids. We have to bring our kids up. They have to have the moral conviction to understand that they need to be involved in things like this. They need to have the intellectual capacity to be able to discuss these issues and talk about them and not sit there and play their games all day. And I think that education is the key, along with the economy, that will allow us to pull ourselves back into a system where the safety net is there for the people that truly, truly need it, but it's not something that we're just handing out to anybody because they know how to jury-rig the system.
Can you repeat the question, please?
In politics, like physics, every action has an equal yet opposite reaction. Should the legislature be successful in limiting or eliminating limited access to abortion in Texas, as a lawmaker, what safety net provisions would you support to ensure that all women and their infant children, especially those who are economically challenged, have adequate access to health care, nutrition, and support programs to become productive, successful citizens and not fall through the cracks?
Well, let me tell you, first of all, I think that it starts before the economy. I think it starts with education. I think it starts with what we're teaching our kids. I think it starts in our homes. I think that we need, this is a societal problem, that we believe that it's okay for abortions to be going on. They've been going on for so long in this country, and most of us go on about our daily lives and just allow it to happen. There's a lot of us that get out and speak out against it, but for the most part, we just allow it to happen and we go on about our lives. I think that we need to start in our homes. I think this is not so much something that the legislature should do, but each of us individually in our homes start teaching our kids what it means to be responsible, to grow up and not only be responsible sexually, but to be responsible financially. And when it be ready financially before you have children, so that you can take care of those children. I think that if we expect the government to take care of these women, we're expecting too much of the government, something that we should not expect from the government. And so I can't really say that there's a good answer for that. I don't want the legislature to do anything to take care of women's health, or I want the government out of women's health. I want the government out of everybody's health. It's one reason why I wanted to kill Obamacare in Texas. because I want the government out of everybody's health care. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to say, as far as Planned Parenthood is concerned, Planned Parenthood has nothing to do with parenthood, and at no time will it ever support any state funding for Planned Parenthood. As far as what happens when these women who have chosen to have a baby, now what happens with their safety net? How do we provide a safety net? You are the safety net. First look is the safety net. Our Judeo-Christian ethics, our churches are the safety net. That's exactly what the safety net is. We like to talk about local control of our cities, our schools. This is local control. These people aren't strangers. We know who they are. The legislature can encourage adoption, make it easier for people to adopt here in Texas. There's plenty of people on waiting lists all over the place. There are so many families waiting to adopt. We encourage adoption. We educate people on adoption so that we don't let any of them slip through the cracks. And we support, through our community, things like First Look. Shelby and I went to the banquet, and everybody else here did, and I was mesmerized by the stories of success that these women had encouraged and taken care of women who were in dire straits and in a bad way in many ways, and had encouraged them to continue on with life, with having that baby, and if necessary, giving them up for adoption or providing for them. We do that as a community. I do not believe that that's the state legislature's role. This is the role of our community, and that's one of the things I love about our community, is that that's why we came back here, because people like us care, and we should do everything we can as a legislature to encourage that kind of participation in communities.
Our third question, and Duke is the first one up on this one. During our discussion on energy policy last week in Ennis, we heard commentary supporting the need to keep Texas open in terms of energy exploration and production. Comments included, and I paraphrase, drill baby drill, the EPA needs to stay out of Texas, and we need to reform the funding mechanism for TCEQ, which has regulatory oversight on industrial and environmental quality. Tonight, we're at Waxahahie, just a few blocks from where the largest industrial accident in the city's history occurred in 2011. Last year, we lost several friends when a fertilizer plant exploded in West Texas. As a Texas lawmaker, part of your responsibility is writing and passing regulation to ensure the protection of both the citizens and our environment. If elected, how do you balance the need for economic growth with the ability to protect citizens from environmental disasters created by industry?
Little known fact, I actually took a buyout from Burge in 1997. I spent a good portion of my adult life in the oil field, drilling for oil. The accidents, the two that were referenced by Neil, were both caused by human error. We had, and we do have, regulations in place to prevent those accidents, but the regulations weren't followed. At Magna Blend, I don't know how many of you know exactly what happened, but they simply ramped up a chemical process that they had done 1,000 times, decided they could do it on a larger scale, and that's what happened. In West, they had the ammonium nitrate stored, and it was not properly labeled. Nobody knew it was there, and the firefighters were not apprised of the situation when they got there. Both of those incidents were breakdowns in communication, breakdowns in the regulations that are in existence. I firmly believe that there are very few problems in this state that we can solve with more regulation. I really do. I believe as an economic engine, regulations kill us. And I'm going to give you one that doesn't have anything to do with this, but it was an interesting one. After the last legislature, I was looking through the bills and I saw one where auctioneers have to have an auction license from the state of Texas. Sounds good to me. If you're auctioning horses or cars or whatever, you have to be a licensed auctioneer. Well, there were people doing online auctions, and it was cutting into their profit. So they lobbied the state, and the state said, we'll fix that for you. And so now if you do an I'm talking to the hallway is full out here too. So y'all still awake? So now if you do an online auction, you have to have this license. So I read the bill and I called down to Jim Pitt's office and I said, hey guys, I think you just outlawed eBay. And they did. It's gonna have to be fixed in the next session. They outlawed eBay unintentionally. Regulations are important. I believe in regulations. But the two incidents there, we had regulations in place. Human error caused the problem. Again, I will restate, I can't think of very many problems in our state that can be solved by more government intervention.
You raise your hand if you've ever had an auto accident. You raise your hand if you've ever been at fault in an auto accident. Well, what if, after you had that auto accident, the government decided they wanted to put more restrictions on your driver's license and say where you could drive or where you couldn't, or how fast you could go? They wanted to put a governor on your car and say you couldn't go this fast anymore. It wouldn't, I bet you most of you wouldn't be too cool with that. And we shouldn't be cool with the idea of doing that to business when they have an accident, to slap more regulations on them, more restrictions on them. We need to understand that accidents happen. And it's just like Duke said, not from lack of regulation that these things happen. It's just an accident sometimes. Now, there are times when regulations are not.
You told me you enjoyed it.
It's not fun when it happens to me. But I don't agree with more regulations. I don't think that's the answer, that we need more regulations slapped on business. They've already got enough regulations. Every once in a while you will have an accident happen, but that doesn't mean we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We just need to enforce the regulations on the books and understand, have an understanding among our society that accidents happen. The Magdalene deal was an accident. They don't need more regulations slapped on them. And I, as a legislature, am not going to be one to push for more regulations.
To my knowledge, there's not a single chemical process or business in this state that is not regulated. Period. Everything is regulated as it is already. In many cases, over-regulated. So whether it be a plane crash or explosion at a plant, what happens? The press gets there. No offense. First one's on the scene. They start speculating. My word, it's time for new regulations because this is a tragedy. And they are tragedies. They sell papers. Everybody's in an uproar. Everybody just needs to calm down because there's going to be an investigation that follows after that. And in these both these cases, and in plane crashes, no matter what you find, there's going to be some type of error that did occur. And to say that we need to regulate some more is just simply a fallacy. That's why Congress is the way it is. They're full-time. Something happens, tragedy occurs, press gets on it, public uproar, we have to pass something. Thankfully, in our state, we're only in session 140 days every 2 years. Right? So the rest of the time, cooler heads can prevail, and we can identify the causes and the causes of any tragedy, any crash, any explosion. We can figure out what was wrong, where the process is followed, and usually they're not. So the last thing we need is all the people who think they're the smartest guys in the room down in Austin telling everybody else what needs to be done to fix the problem. Generally, it's something that happened as an accident, and I'm not for furthering regulation on anything else. Never. Thanks.
You know, when I was growing up, if you wanted to add a carport onto your house, you would go down to the local building supply store and pick up a load of nails and 2x4s and come back and start building. If you wanted to put a septic system out behind your house, you would go down to the building supply store and you'd buy some pipe and some lateral line pipe and maybe a couple of 55-gallon drums, and you were in business. You can't do that anymore. You have to get permits, you have to get some regulatory authority to come out and inspect. You have to have, with septic systems, you have to have an annual contract and pay a fee, a whole bunch of documents with the county. That bothers me. That really, really bothers me. I have a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old children, who will never know a world where you could just build a carport or put in a septic system without getting a permit for paying a fee, or getting an inspection, or having an annual contract. My children will be more conditioned to this level of regulation and this level of government interference. It's a slippery slope. It's death by 1,000 cuts. It's the frog in the pot of water, and the heat keeps getting turned up slowly, and by the time you realize you're cooked, it's too late to get out. That's one of the reasons I'm running for this office. And I hope by these examples and these analogies I've given you, you can get the picture on where I stand on more regulations.
TJ will lead off our next question. There has been much discussion on using part of the state's rainy day fund for major infrastructure needs to ensure the state's continued economic growth and prosperity, particularly in the areas of water and transportation. If elected, what is your stand on using the rainy day fund, and under what circumstances would you provide that support?
We don't need to use the rainy day fund for anything other than a rainy day. That means an emergency, when we need it. Our transportation is not an emergency. What it is a mismanagement of funds. The state government has, and we keep going back to this, we kept going back to it at the last forum, diversions of funds. Gas tax and vehicle registration tax are supposed to pay for our roads, but they're not, because they're using that money to pay for other things. If you took your money in your personal budget, your money that you had allotted for your car payment, and used it to go throw a big party, and then you couldn't make your car payment, would you go to your boss and say, hey, I need more money, I can't make my car payment, I spent that money on something else? No. Your boss would say, hey, you need to get your budget straight. And that's what our government needs to do. We need to get our budget straight. If we have dedicated funds, then they need to stay dedicated for that purpose. We've got to stop the diversion of funds. I want to introduce a bill in the Texas House that would stop the diversion of funds. That means that all the money that was dedicated towards education from the Texas Lottery would be rededicated to education. That means all the funds that were dedicated from gas tax and vehicle registration tax would be rededicated to transportation. And we leave it there. We don't touch it. We don't let politicians get their grubby mitts on it and use it for something else. We've got to stop it, folks. We're Texas is #1 in road debt in the nation. We have got to stop it. It's insane. We're burying our kids up to their eyeballs in debt, and most of them hadn't even spent a penny of their own yet. If you elect me, I'll go down there and introduce the bill to start bringing some common sense back to our transportation needs. Thank you.
When would I use it? What we had with water is overuse that we didn't expect, high population increase, which we didn't see coming, an extreme drought, which we've had for the last 6 years, and for the last 20 years, a lack of foresight and planning for one of the core competencies, one of the core requirements of state government, which is to provide for water. It's a generational issue. and everybody will dance around some myriad of small ball laws and issues that they'll pass down the state legislature when the crisis is looking them right in the face. There are a few things that the government has to do and do them well at the state level. Provide for water for the next generation, provide roads for the mass influx and for industry and for the next generation. Unfortunately now, we're also going to have to provide for the border, but public education as well. So we had a crisis, and I did support Prop 6 because we got ourselves into a mess, and it did become an emergency. Now, fortunately, we've acquired we've gotten $2.7 billion back in oil and gas taxes when the prognosticator said we were going to get 0.9. So we've already got the $2 billion back that we set aside for Prop 6. But let's not do that stuff anymore. You have to have foresight. You have to think big down in Austin. I'm not talking about spending a lot of money, but you have to plan 20 years down the road. And for the last 20 years, they've forgotten how to do that. And that's what I'll do when I go down to Austin.
The rainy day fund, which is called the Economic Stabilization Fund, once you really dig deep into state government, is essentially the state's savings account. You know, and I think it needs to be used just like your personal savings account is used. If you have an unexpected temporary fluctuation in your income, you dip into savings. If you have an unexpected or major repair, you dip into savings. Let me give you another example of how we might use this savings account. We've heard numerous proposals. I think all the candidates to some degree would support tax reform in Texas that would shift some of our tax revenue from either the margin tax or the property tax over to an end-user consumption tax. The fact is, if we do that, that might have a tremendous impact on spurring economic growth in Texas. It might have a number of other benefits as well, but one of the things that'll do is the sales tax is extremely volatile. I know this in part because I've served on the city council during the Great Recession, where the city government derives a great deal of its tax revenue from sales tax. And when the economy slows down, the sales tax suddenly dramatically slows down. If we switch to an end-user consumption tax and begin shifting to that in the state of Texas, we're going to need an adequate savings account to smooth out that volatility. That's one of the things that's going to happen. The good news is our savings account is in great shape. It has a limit, a statutory or constitutional limit that it's going to reach in the year 2021. That's $20.2 billion that will be in that savings account. I think once we establish a conservative amount that should be in that savings account, and we provide for infrastructure, that any other growth in that tax revenue should be returned to taxpayers.
During the debate on Prop 6, one of the guys was down there at a couple of the hearing meetings, and it happened to be the man that wrote the language for the rainy day fund. And he was sitting there saying, I wrote the rainy day fund for one thing, and that was for education. That was what he said, okay? Obviously, that's not what we've used it for. So I'm going to tell you what I think it is and what I would use it for, and I'm going to tell you what I would not use it for. Right now, the fund sits at $8 billion. That's B with a billion. In this next biennium, we're expecting it to grow to $12 billion. And that's after Prop 6 takes its $2 billion out. You're going to have a constitutional question on the November ballot, which would allow a $1.2 billion transfer into a one-time payment for transportation to go into TxDOT for infrastructure development. I believe in using the rainy day fund for one-shot, one-time expenditures, whether it be a disaster, whether it be something that we need funding for at that time, but it needs to be one shot. I would never, ever sponsor, support, or sign on to a bill that utilized the rainy day fund for an ongoing expense. It would never be used for something that's going to happen every year, every year, every year, because that is fiscally irresponsible. I'm gonna close by saying one other thing, and John touched on it. Technically, the rainy day fund is money that our government has overcharged us. Okay? The difference between my saving account and their savings account is I made mine out of my paycheck. Theirs, they made out of my paycheck. Okay? When the rainy day fund reaches an excess amount, and that amount is defined, we do need to return it to the taxpayers. Thank you.
TJ got a little ahead of me on this next question, so when it's your turn, TJ, you get a little bit of extra time. For our fifth question, let's talk about transparency in accounting. Most Texans assume that all proceeds from the Texas lottery are being used to fund education. Likewise with the fuel tax, which most assume those taxes are only being used to fund transportation needs. Is this assumption correct? And if not, what is your stance on using dedicated funding in the state's general fund? And as a lawmaker, what will you do to ensure taxes are being used for what the taxpayers think they are supposed to be used for? And Jake, you're up first.
That's a great question, and for this community, I know that this is a very big deal, and it is to me too. Most of the money we send down to Austin goes into the general fund. That means that when it's time to budget things that are important to our state, that we're supposed to be planning long-term for, they all have to jockey for the money that they're getting. Like TxDOT, we need $4 billion. Well, it's in there. I mean, we had $3.6 billion sent to the state coffers last year from new car sales tax. TxDOT is asking for 4. So if you combine the money that we take from new car sales, from vehicle registrations, and from the gas tax, you have the $4 billion to send to TxDOT. Now, I'm not saying for 1 second that TxDOT is saying they need $4 billion. I'm not saying they need that. I think we need to audit them before we decide exactly how much money they need. And they do need it, but they need a funding line that is predictable, so we don't jockey around every 2 years. So the truth is that every dime that we take from the lottery, which is $1 billion last year, should not go to the general fund. Education needs to have a steady and predictable money stream. That's what the lottery was for in the first place. All that money goes into education. So I don't like playing whack-a-mole, and I don't like it when people take our money and say, don't worry about it, we got it taken care of. There's nothing to see here. We'll take care of all the budgetary needs. I'm a pretty simple guy. I want to know exactly where it's going, and if I'm paying you money for the new car that I bought for my registration, it's going for that usage and that usage alone, which is the roads. We've got predictable money streams that can fund almost every core function that government has. And we need to stop playing around with it, because when you start playing around with it, lobbyists get a hold of it too. So let's take the money out of the hands of the lobbyists, put it where it's supposed to go. Let's have a predictable state every 2 years. Thanks.
I think we need to end the diversions. The state fuel tax, approximately 47% of it gets diverted. That 47% equals about $650 million. That would help close that $4 billion gap that TxDOT needs. If we stopped that diversion, and if we started phasing in and dedicating this vehicle sales tax over time to roadways, we could solve our roadway problem. How do we make sure it stays solved? How do we make sure that politics doesn't start chipping away at solving that problem or the fix? I think we just pass laws and instruct the Texas Comptroller to take that money and put it into a specific account, and it can't be used for anything but what it's dedicated for. When we call it a separate account or track it separately, and it doesn't just go into general revenue, it goes into a place where it's set aside. We just apply the same principles you would probably apply if you were saving for a special purpose or trying to direct funds for a special purpose. I need to set aside some money every month and make sure I have enough money at the end of the year to pay my homeowner's insurance. So I put that in a special account, and that's all I put in there, and that's all I use it for. And I'm sure some of you do the same things, and that's what state government needs to do. It needs to do some of the same things that you do in your life and in your finances. Just common sense. Additionally, I think I very much support transparency. We have a lot of transparency requirements at the state government level, which requires the state government to post budgetary figures online. I want to strengthen that, make sure it's adhered to, and to make sure that that information is posted in a concise and meaningful way. I've looked at it. It's a window on state government. Comptroller has the website. I would encourage you to look at it. The only problem sometimes with government transparency is that there's just so darn much information. You get lost in it. So we need to make sure that that information, that the bulky substance is behind it if you want to see it, but it's also presented in a summary way that allows you to navigate it.
You ever played three-card Monte? You know what it is? Well, you've never been to New Orleans? The Texas Lottery is our version, albeit very large, of three-card Monte. Every dollar that comes into the lottery goes into education. It does right now. That's what we founded, that's what we agreed to the lottery on, if y'all remember that. And it does happen right now. Unfortunately, when they write the budget for education out of the permanent school fund, they say it's going to take X number of millions of dollars, and here's how we're going to fund this. And they do it. And they do it off of property taxes for the most part. And then at the end of the year, the Texas Lottery Commission says, guess what? We've got $1 billion for you. And they say, here you go. And the legislators go, well, that's great. We put that $1 billion in the school fund. Now we can take $1 billion of that other funding and use it for something else. It's a shell game. So every dollar from the lottery does go to education, but then they pull out the funding somewhere else. And I realize that's a tricky concept, but it's a concept we've got to get around. We've got to have complete transparency in where the money goes. I'm going to add one other piece to this, and I've said this 1,000,000 times. All this money comes from taxes, and the lottery is a form of taxes, right? And I've said it over and over. It's not always the taxes that are killing us. It's the way we spend it. If we do a bill, as everyone has said, and all of this money has to go where it was supposed to go, then the lawmakers are going to have to take that place where it used to go and either cut those programs or figure out some other way to fund them. So it's not always the taxes that are the bugaboo, but the spending, and that's what I want to work on, is the spending. Transparency in government. Midlothian ISD was one of the first districts in the state of Texas to publish our check register online. We did it 11 years ago.
Well, as I mentioned before, I want to end divergence in Texas. It's not right. It's not how any of us run our own budgets, and it's not how our state government should run theirs. But let's talk about the waste, since Duke touched on that. There is a lot of waste. One area of waste in public education is, in my opinion, the Texas Education Agency. I believe it's a waste of money. I believe that the State Board of Education can do everything that the Texas Education Agency does. And they're an elected board. They're accountable to the people, whereas the Texas Education Agency is not. And so one area that I would like to cut some waste is to abolish the Texas Education Agency and give all those responsibilities to the State Board of Education. And that's all I have to add, since I already answered the question.
Okay, John, you're up first with the next question. All four candidates have asked to address health care. Share your views on the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, what Texas should do as a state in addressing this federal issue.
Sure. I don't like it. The bipartisan or nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office has said that Obamacare will kill 2.3 million jobs in the U.S. economy by the year 2021. I think that Obamacare is a job killer. I think that it is an unnecessary takeover of one of the most significant portions of the U.S. economy by the central planning regime mandated by the federal government. I think that it's an overreach, and I don't like it. And I think that we in Texas, and by the way, Texas has created most of the jobs. When you see President Obama tout the number of jobs created during the last several years in the United States, most of those jobs have been created in Texas. In order for us to keep that going and to fight this, we need to fight Obamacare. The way we fight Obamacare is we have to be strategic about it, and we have to win back our rights incrementally and over time. What happened was the U.S. Supreme Court interpreted the Constitution very literally and strictly for most of the history of our republic up until the progressive era after the Industrial Revolution. And then the U.S. Supreme Court started interpreting the Constitution more liberally, especially the Commerce Clause. And then that really gained steam in the New Deal era following the Great Depression. But states lost rights, and the federal government got bigger incrementally over time, and that's what we have to do to win those things back. So what we have to do is incrementally chip away at Obamacare and other overreaching federal programs. I have been studying proposals by the 10th Amendment Institute, which is part of the Texas Public Policy Foundation. It's an institute that used to be headed up by Senator Ted Cruz, who's a U.S. Supreme Court advocate before he became our senator. And they have several interesting proposals on how we can do this. They don't advocate federal nullification because it won't work. There's a 1958 U.S. Supreme Court opinion, Cooper versus Aaron, that specifically says nullification doesn't work. You have to be more strategic. I will work with the Attorney General and with other legislators to pass legislation that we can fight back and give a bloody nose to President Obama on Obamacare. Quickly, one of the ways we can do that is to pass laws that say that persons in Texas or healthcare providers, regulators, people who enforce the laws in Texas will not suffer any penalties if they fail to apply Obamacare. And we take those cases to court, we push the envelope, we start winning, then we come back and we push the envelope again. That's essentially what we did with voter ID. We'll keep doing it. I know how to do that.
Justice Roberts got it wrong. Does anyone disagree with that? Okay, what are we going to do about it? Well, Texas is on the path right now. First off, by failing to expand Medicaid. Medicaid, by the way, the expansion in Texas, if we decided we were going to fund this, you send me down to Austin and they say, we're going to do this, we would have to appropriate $2.5 billion in the next biennium just to cover the start of it. Okay? Lots and lots of money. So I'm against that. We're not going to expand Medicaid. We're going to leave it the way it is. We're not going to expand it. You know, Medicaid, the way it sits right now, a person on Medicaid has a 40% higher emergency room visit than an uninsured person. Okay? Medicaid is not what it was intended to be. I go back to my earlier statement that there's 35 states where welfare outpays the minimum wage. We got to fix that. How are we going to fix Obamacare? Oddly enough, and stick with me here, where's Linda and Harlan? That the 9th and 10th Amendments give us a little bit here that we can work with. Obamacare is beyond the scope of authority of the federal government. It just is. Roberts got it wrong. It needs to be revisited. It's beyond the scope of the federal government. They do not have the power to enact that. I'm going to follow it up and say, oddly enough, the state of Texas would. If the state of Texas decided to do Pericare, they would have the constitutional authority to do so, although I have a feeling it probably wouldn't pass. We've got to fight it. We've got to fight it every single way we can. I agree that nullification does not work, but I do believe that there are ways that we can push back against the federal government and we can keep this from encroaching on us. I also believe that if you look at the numbers right now, Obamacare is destined to fail anyway. It's based on the fact that the young, healthy people are going to join in and they're going to pay for the old, sickly people like me, and that's just not happening. The insurers have a fail-safe clause in there, and once they start saying, hey, we're losing billions of dollars, I believe that Obamacare will fail anyway. But I will fight in Austin.
I really appreciate this question because it gives me a chance to set myself apart from my opponents. I do support nullification because I understand the structure of our government. Our federal government was created by the states. That means they derive all of their power from us, from the consent of the government. And what good are the 9th and 10th Amendments if we can't truly assert those rights, those states' rights, by saying, no, we're not going to do this, it's wrong, we're not going to do it. I guarantee you, if the federal government outlawed guns, you would dang sure want us to nullify that law. So why don't we nullify this one? We've got to protect the state of Texas, the people of the state of Texas. That is the state government's job, to protect the people of the state of Texas from this monster in D.C. And I will do it. I will introduce a bill. I actually helped to author a bill that was introduced last session that would have nullified Obamacare and made it null and void in the state of Texas and protected the people of Texas from Obamacare. If your state government can't do that, then what good are they? Why are they worth having? We might as well just have a central government. We need to assert our states' rights, folks, and nullification is the only way to do that. And I'll do it. Thank you.
Well, the horse is dead. Obamacare is an abomination. It's a massive overreach. Our legislators in the last session did it right. We're not participating willingly in Obamacare. We're not going to expand Medicaid because Medicaid in 3 years would be the highest budget item that we have. It'll collapse under its own weight once the federal funds start running out, which we've already given them, and we're just taking it back. Well, then it's going to collapse under its own weight. And what are we going to let fall out of our budget once the Medicaid with the dirty strings attached from Washington, D.C. comes and takes over? It's not a possibility. We can't do that. Governor Perry has proposed block grants, which I agree with. Basically, he's saying, we've already given you the money. You're not taking care of it. We just want it back. That's how you handle the health care issue. Now, there's a difference between health care and insurance. We have great health care here, but as Duke said, Medicaid, the folks who are on Medicaid are going to the emergency room 40% faster. I'm stealing your number, but I read it too, so I hope you forgive me. Like I said, the horse is dead. Stay out of Obamacare. We don't take their Medicaid money. We take block grants. That's how we solve this problem. Thank you.
Follow-up question. Texas has one of the highest percentage of uninsured and underinsured residents in the nation. What can and should the legislature do to address that issue? And Duke, you're up first.
I'm curious where the number comes from. I'm going to speculate, and I'm going to say that we have one of the highest uninsured rates in the nation because we have 4 times the illegal immigrants in Texas. 4 times the national average illegal immigrants. And I'm going to guess that may be part of the number that you're looking at. So how are we going to fix that? And it's really simple. We talked about it early on. Jobs, economy, education. We have to keep this economy, we're the fastest growing economy in the nation. We've created more jobs than most of the rest of the nation together. We have a larger gross national product or number than a lot of the countries in the world. Texas is a great place to be. And we're going to keep it that way. And we're going to do that by taking care of our folks. And we're going to do that by, and I realize this is a segue, but we're going to seal the border. We're going to stop the illegal immigration. And then we're gonna follow up with stopping the illegal immigration. We're gonna follow it up by sending the federal government a bill, because we're gonna do it with our own people and with our own resources, then we're gonna bill them because it's their responsibility. But then I wanna go one step further, and I want to work on a guest visa program which would allow legal, honest, hard-working Mexican nationals to come to this state and work in our system, pay taxes into our system, and become contributors to our system. The Democrats don't want that to happen. They don't want it to happen because they think that all the Hispanics want to be citizens. And the answer is no, they don't. They don't want to be citizens. Does anybody remember Willie Sutton? Am I telling you how old I am? Willie Sutton was a famous bank robber. And somebody asked him one time, Willie, why do you rob all the banks? And he said, it's simple. It's where the money is. These folks are coming up here because we've got a great place. We've got a lot of work to do. We've got hospitality, we've got infrastructure, we've got roads, we've got housing. We bring them up here, we get them here legally. I'm not talking about amnesty, I'm not talking about path to citizenship. We get them contributing to our system, and a lot of these problems are going to take care of themselves. We are the job engine for the United States. We let that continue to grow, we let that continue to build, and we take care of our folks, and I guarantee you that a lot of these problems are going to get a whole lot easier to manage. Thank you.
Texas has one of the highest percentage of uninsured and underinsured residents in the nation. What can and should the legislature do to address that issue?
I'm gonna have to agree with Duke on this. Why are our insurance costs so high? Because our healthcare costs are so high. Why are our healthcare costs so high? Because so many people are getting free healthcare. And the cost is being passed on to the people who will pay for it. And we've got to look at who is getting free healthcare. And unfortunately, many of the people who are getting free healthcare are here illegally. And we've got to solve this issue. We've got, first and foremost, we've got to stop waiting on the federal government to do its job and take care of Texas. We've got, I'm all for using the state guard, state troopers, and a volunteer force of Minutemen that are ex-military, ex-police, or current police and current military that would go down there voluntarily. They're ready to go right now. They just need their hands untied. And we need to secure that border. Get our border problem under control, stop the flow of illegal immigrants into the state of Texas, stop giving them free tuition to go to college, stop educating their kids for free, and turn off the magnet. There's a magnet. I was recently endorsed by a group called Stop the Magnet that is for getting our illegal immigration problem under control in Texas. And so I really believe that our insurance problems, they are totally dependent on our health care costs, and our health care costs are totally dependent upon the fact that we have so many people in this state that are receiving free medical care, and the rest of us are having to pay for it. So we've got to get that problem under control.
I'd like you to repeat the question one more time.
Texas has one of the highest percentage of uninsured or underinsured residents in the nation. What can and should the legislature do to address that issue?
All right, I'm going to answer that question. The answer to that question is nowhere in the Texas or United States Constitution is insuring people anywhere listed. That's not our job. I believe in personal responsibility, and that's where if people, 1.5 million people don't have insurance, that's not the legislature's job to take care of, and it's not my fault. We're talking about the high cost of health care, absolutely. 100% agree with both of these guys. We spend $500 million on securing the border with boots on the ground, strategic fencing, sensors on the ground and in the air. We save ourselves $7.5 billion a year in all kinds of costs. So that's simple. But as far as insurance goes, Texans believe in independence, self-sufficiency, going out and getting a job and taking care of your family. I'm probably pretty sure that those 1.5 million people who don't have insurance, they have iPhones and they have satellite TVs.
Yes, they do.
Your tax dollars don't go to helping those people. That's just the way it is. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna track Jacob a bit on this. I think the short answer to the question is nothing. I don't think it's the job of the government to provide health insurance. I think that if you're a male and you don't want maternity coverage, you should be able to choose an insurance policy that covers I think that if you are 19 years old and in very good health and you want to choose a high deductible policy, you should have the ability to choose that on the free market. If you're a student of history and you're interested in history, you know, you probably read a little bit about the early days of Ford Motor Company and Henry Ford, who really revolutionized the way we do business in the United States of America. And Ford Motor Company, and this was before the days of unions, this was not union driven. Ford Motor Company provided some of the greatest benefits there were out there. A daily wage was about 500% of what you could make in other locations, and you were afforded benefits. And you know what did that? The free market economy. I think that's how we address healthcare in the United States. Thank you.
I'm debating on whether or not to skip the last one, since you all answered the healthcare question with border security.
But for border security, we need better health care.
Last week, we discussed border security. For those who may not have been able to attend last week's debate, Dennis, please recap your position on the issues Texas is facing in securing its border with Mexico, and what the state can do to address this federal issue and solve our insurance problem.
Does anybody need clarification on this for me?
Oh, are you done? I didn't even get a chance to think of my answer. No, I answered the last one.
Okay.
Now I forgot what the question is. It's about border security. It's border security.
Unless you want to talk about insurance.
No. It's about border security. The border is a clear and present danger to the security of Texas and the United States. President Obama has abrogated his responsibility under the Constitution to faithfully execute those laws to defend the border of Texas from invasion. And it's not a military invasion, but it's an invasion of 60% of the folks who come up from Mexico are not of Mexican descent. They are narco-terrorists and human traffickers. This is a moral issue. It's an issue about our children. The scourge of our schools is drugs. And the scourge of our entire country, the reason we have so many silly rules about terrorism is because we got a soft underbelly. It's the border of Texas. There's terrorists coming up through the border of Texas every day. And they're out here. And they're waiting to strike. This is a national security issue, and they're not doing anything about it. And we're from Texas, so we will. Spend $500 million next year. Listen, $500 million, that's a swag. I think we ought to audit that anyway and decide how much. But the truth is, we can spend some money to secure the border with boots on the ground, strategic fencing, assets on the ground and in the air. Now, the assets in the air only look at the border. They don't go anywhere else. Secure that border. We're going to save ourselves a lot of money. We're going to make ourselves more secure. We're going to take care of our children the way they should be. There are so many issues at stake here. It's going to be at least 2 years before Congress takes care of it with any legislation they currently have under work. 2 more years. Time to start now. It's up to us. That's how we've always done it.
It is the federal government's duty under the Constitution, but they're not doing it, so we have to do it ourselves. We need to keep a sharp pencil to keep up with the money we spend, and we need to present that bill to the federal government to get our money back. How do we do it? We put more people in the border zone. We use technology, barriers, cameras, aircraft. I too am concerned about your personal information. I do not want the government spying on you and collecting data about you. So what I would suggest doing is to create a zone wherein we can use some of this technology. For example, from the border up to 10 miles inland. I'm just making up the number 10 miles inland. That's up for debate. We need to study that and look into it. But this is an area in which this technology can be used. The technology has to be carefully scrubbed to make sure the government is taking improper information and spying on U.S. citizens, so we have to be careful about that. I want to be careful about that. That's why I would use the zone approach on where this technology can be used. But I think through boots on the ground and through technology, we can secure the border. The other thing I would suggest to you is that if we are able over time to phase in use of end user consumption taxes more than our property tax and more than our business margin tax, everyone pays those taxes that's in the state of Texas, whether they're visiting or whether they're here legally or illegally, and that would be a way for us to ensure that we're capturing the value of government services from people who are in this state illegally.
Ditto, ditto, ditto. Or if you're a fan of Yul Brynner, he would say, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? I've got an idea. Why don't we put a fence around the northern border and start enacting a Yankee tax? Huh? What do you think about that? You gotta have a visa to come to Texas. That's a good idea. She liked that. Folks, this is one of the issues that you're not going to get a lot of separation on. We all agree. Border security, number one. People are crossing that don't need to be crossing. We got to seal the border. We got to send the federal government a bill. And then you know that I want to follow up with some type of efficient guest visa program that will allow, honest, hardworking Mexican nationals to come up here and perform a job, an honest day's job, and pay into our system. So I'm still open to the Yankee border if anybody wants to talk about it. Thank you.
I just want to point out that I do not support a Yankee border. All you Yankees in here, I really appreciate y'all. Coming to Texas, you made a good choice.
Okay, moving on to audience questions. In light of Colorado and Washington legalizing marijuana, do you support the legalization of marijuana for Texas?
Just me?
Jake, you're up first.
You got 3 minutes? No.
No.
I'm actually going to talk just a little bit. Do I support Texas legalizing marijuana?
I believe that's what the question is. In light of Colorado and Washington legalizing marijuana and some in Texas calling for the same, do you support legalizing marijuana?
Okay, well, I can say no to that. I can say no to that. I have no desire to legalize marijuana. But I can also say, and this is an extremely personal story for me, that I have a sister who I love dearly. She grew up in the same house that I did. She grew up with the same parents that I did. And she did 7 years in state penitentiary for illegal drugs. If there is one thing that I could do for our kids, if I could figure out how to do it, it would be to convince them that they can be anything that they want to be, and that they need to stay away from the alcohol and the drugs. Now, I drank beer when I was a kid. I haven't been drunk in my adult life. I drink wine with dinner, and that's about it. I don't drink liquor because I like girl drinks and I refuse to go into a bar and So I drink wine with dinner. And I grew up in the 70s, and unlike our illustrious president, yes, I did inhale in the 70s, but I haven't, I don't know that the initial experience with drugs and alcohol, I don't know that that's as big an issue as it is with society and how we cope with that, and how we need to just wrap our arms around our kids and teach them what they need to be and live an example for them. The question was, would I legalize marijuana? The answer is absolutely no, but I gotta go further than that and say, how many of you know what a PK is? PKs are preacher's kids, and I grew up with a bunch of PKs, and PK is always the worst one in the bunch. And sometimes you have to understand that the toughest love sometimes will cause a kid to rebel. And I'm just saying, we gotta learn to grab hold of our kids. We gotta learn to show them and lead by example, and we gotta learn to mold them into responsible adults.
How many in here believe that the federal war on drugs has been a success?
That's 100%.
So everybody would agree that, at least at the federal level, that laws against these drugs are not doing any good. You can still get them. They're available to everybody. Anybody that wants them, right? And the law doesn't stop them. Just like if you outlaw guns, it's not going to stop people from having guns. Then only outlaws are going to have guns. So you create a whole new class of criminal. We tried this with alcohol. We tried prohibition. And it created a whole new class of criminal. Al Capone existed solely because of prohibition. It created Al Capone. And then, what did the federal government do? They passed the National Firearms Act, which banned fully automatic weapons from law-abiding citizens. And it started the push for gun control. And I believe that the only reason why we ever had prohibition was so that they could push for that gun control. I don't agree with getting an 18-year-old kid and popping him with a bag of pop and locking him up and putting him in a place where he learns how to become a real criminal. That does not make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm all about common sense, and I'm all about freedom, and I'm all about, if you are doing something that is absolutely not harming anybody else, if you're drinking a six-pack on your sofa, I don't think the government should arrest you. I'm sorry, folks, some of you may disagree with me, but I've got to be honest with you. If you're smoking a joint on your sofa and not harming anybody else, then I don't think that the government should mess with you. And maybe that makes me crazy, but it's freedom. It's freedom. Thank
you. Next question from the audience. How do you feel about vouchers in public schools? John, you're up.
Here's what I thought on vouchers. Most of what I've seen and read and have heard about vouchers is vouchers would very much damage and possibly destroy the traditional ISDs in rural locations. Okay? So if you look at our urban areas, the traditional ISDs are very much blighted because folks that live in urban areas typically send their kids to private schools or they choose homeschooling. If we end up in a situation where we have a voucher system, people that live in rural areas, in order to get the same level of choice, they will probably have to move to an urban area. Or they will have to pack up their kids and send them to boarding schools in the urban areas, and we can really destroy rural school districts. We have rural school districts in House District 10, and the other thing that I don't like about that concept is the heart of America and the heart of Texas is in rural areas. And I don't want to do anything that encourages and increases urbanization. People choose to live urbanly, that's great, but it's living out there in the rural areas is where our traditional family values are retained. It's where life skills are learned. It's where individualism, self-reliance are valued and inspired and instilled. And I do not want to see a voucher system encourage urbanization. So, I haven't seen a voucher proposal yet that addresses those concerns for me. Perhaps a voucher system could be explored strictly in an urban area or within a specific geographic area, but right now I have a lot of concerns about a voucher system destroying rural school districts. And quite frankly, folks, because the vast majority of Texas is rural school districts, and your state legislators represent those rural school districts, it would be very hard to get a voucher system through the legislature right now, as I understand it, and I'm just telling you the truth. But my thought on it is I don't want to see it destroy rural school districts and increase urbanization. Thank you.
When the Republic of Texas was founded, one of the early presidents was Mirabeau B. Lamar. He is the father of education in the state of Texas. He's named that because he insisted that the Republic of Texas have in its constitution a provision that all children in the Republic of Texas would receive a free education. Now, we can talk about the word free all you want to, but the fact of the matter is kids don't pay tuition. Okay? We fund it through property tax, but kids don't pay tuition. There has been an effort, I believe a concerted effort, to destroy public education in the state of Texas. I think it's a concerted attack, and I think that part of that attack is with vouchers. Now, I'm with John. There hasn't been a single voucher bill yet that I would promote, that I would sign off on. I will say this, that when you talk about an urban school district and you have a failing district, then I believe that the parents should have the right, and there was a bill that actually had some legs on it this year. It had a companion bill in the Senate. It just never made it out of committee in both of them, that would have had districts that have a common border. The parents would have had the ability to move from a poor performing school to a well performing school, and the money would have followed the kid. Not technically a voucher, but it allows the money to follow the kid. I'm going to close this with one other observation, and I may lose a vote or two here, but I'm 57 years old. I have never in my life called the fire department or the police department to my house, or the sheriff. Where's Johnny? He's still back there? But I still believe in paying for the taxes to support the police, the fire, the sheriff. I believe that public education is one of those areas that we have an obligation to support. And I believe that the current systems of vouchers would damage that.
Question?
How do you feel about vouchers in public schools?
Let me tell you, first of all, I believe in free market solutions. I believe in free choice when it comes to education. I believe that parents should have a choice on where their kids and how their kids are educated. And so I have no other choice but to support the voucher system. I believe that kids should, if there's a better education to be sought elsewhere, that they should have access to that education. And so I support free market economies. That means free choice when it comes to education. And I'm a supporter of the vouchers.
I'd like to pay Duke Burge a compliment. My wife and I moved to Midlothian in large measure because our 2- and 5-year-olds are going to go to school in Midlothian. They have fantastic public schools. They are economically sound, with some debt, but excellent facilities and a good curriculum. I love public education, and I was a product of public education. I also believe that education of my children is a product, much like a car or anything else, except it's a life essential product that I have the right to choose where I send my kids to school, because it is a life essential product. And so if I'm seeing something, and I had the capability and the economic means to move to a fantastic school district, I'm very proud of it. I don't think everybody is. And I don't think it's going to damage the public school system if we have a voucher program that allows people to try to get into Midlothian. I don't believe that's going to destroy the public school system, because this place is in good shape. It's bring it up to the free market system. Failing schools. And you and I both know that there's some school districts out there that are atrocious because of leadership. The school boards, people have a beef, they get on there because they're mad. There are failing school districts. In spite of the fact we don't have vouchers right now. But if you have a voucher system, open it up to the free market system, where people can go to very good schools and not go to the schools that are failing, that market system is going to take care of itself. So I do believe in vouchers. I don't believe I have all the answers to exactly how we execute that, but I do believe in parental choice for the education of our kids. Thanks.
We have time for one more audience question before we move on to closing remarks, and this was a really neat question. What is the first law you will author as a freshman lawmaker, and what bad law would you repeal? Duke, you're up first.
You do understand that you're not electing the new chair of House Appropriations, right? Whichever one of us is down there will have an office that'll be in the third stall, in the men's room, in the last set of elevators, in the annex. I will have to leave breadcrumbs so that you can come visit us. Freshmen don't typically get to author any bills or any bills that make it out. But there are a couple of things that I would like to see done. There are quite a few things that I would like to see done. We're going to have to tackle education. We're going to have to tackle the funding. That's going to be ruled as unconstitutional, has been, and the judge is going to rule that that has to be fixed. Am I going to write the new education bill? I can assure you I'm not, but I'll guarantee you I will have input on it, and it will be physically sound. You mentioned Midlothian ISD. Last night at the Midlothian ISD School Board, we were notified that we were one of 55 districts in the state, out of over 1,000 districts, to have achieved the comptroller's recognition in terms of how fiscally accountable we were, how fiscally efficient we were, combined with how well our kids did, not just on test scores, but on follow-up in college. They tracked the kids. One of 55 districts out of 1,000, and I'm proud of that. I'm going to write bills, and there's going to be honestly a few of them, or very few of them, because as I said earlier, I don't know that there's a lot of problems we can solve by more regulations. We can repeal, and I heard it from over here. There's a couple of laws on the books that, well, first off, we're going to have to work on that deal about outlawing eBay, because I think that's probably not what they intended to happen. So we're going to have to adjust that one. Second, do you know that it's still against the law in the state of Texas to carry a pair of wire pluckers in your back pocket? You can carry it in your front pocket. Can't carry it in your back pocket. It is illegal in the state of Texas for an Africanized honeybee to fly across the border. There's Jake's immigration right there. Technology that stop those bad boys from coming across. Folks, they do thousands upon thousands of bills every single session. And most of them, albeit, are things like recognizing, Debbie for scoring reserve grand champion in FFA. A lot of them are those type of laudatory, congratulatory bills. But they do a lot of bills. I'm not one of these people that feels like I need to go to Austin and immediately start writing bills with my name on it. It's just not me. It's not how I behave. It's not what I believe in doing. I do promise you that I will go down there and I will work. And I will work hard on legislation that makes our government more transparent, more efficient, and more responsive to the citizens. Thank you.
First piece of legislation that I would want to pass. Well, as Duke said, as a freshman lawmaker, it's probably not going to happen. So you need to build relationships with other lawmakers that see things the way that you do. Not reach across that aisle and say, hey, I'm ready to compromise with you, buddy. No, don't compromise. Find the people that see things pretty close to the way that you do. More senior lawmakers, and start building that relationship. I've already started building those relationships. I have relationships with David Simpson, with Jonathan Stickland, who was rated the most conservative lawmaker in the state of Texas. I've already built relationships with Giovanni Capriglione and Matt Schaefer out of Tyler, second most conservative lawmaker in the state of Texas. And so you start to build these relationships, and you start to work on legislation that maybe you can't pass, but they can pass, because they do have the seniority. And one of the bills that I would pass, I've already told you that I helped to author it in the 83rd legislature, would be a bill to nullify Obamacare in Texas. I think it's very important. I think it's important that we stop this very soon before we get any deeper. We've already gotten a lot deeper into Obamacare than I think we should have ever gotten. And I think that we need the state to act, because it is clear, if anybody in this room thinks that Obamacare is going to be taken care of in the courts or at the federal level, you've already seen that fail over and over and over. So to think that that is the solution is insane. What is the definition of insanity? Trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. We've got to try something different. We've got to nullify.
Well, the first law I'd like to see go away is the phasing out of the property tax over the course of 6 years, going to a consumption tax. Gives us 6 years to do it in a very intelligent manner, such that we start reducing the property tax immediately and start sending it towards a consumption tax in a broad range manner, seeing how it works until it's phased out over the course of 6 years, so that at the point at which your property is paid for, you own it. One bill that I would humbly submit as a freshman is the Texas Border Security Act.
I agree that freshman lawmakers don't have a lot of influence, but I think you can work with more senior lawmakers to try to get things done, and hope springs eternal, at least it does for me, usually. I'd like to also see us phase toward a consumption tax and phase away from a property tax. But in the meantime, one of the things I'd like to do is to get more accountability in the property tax system. The main way I think we can do that is to popularly allow people to elect the appraisal review board. So I would like to introduce legislation to work on popularly electing the appraisal review board. If your appraisal is too high, you protest that, and the people you protest it to is the appraisal review board. The appraisal review board is currently appointed by the board of directors of the appraisal district. The appraisal district board of directors is appointed by the taxing authorities. So there's no accountability to the electorate, to the citizens in that system. And if you've ever appealed your property taxes, you probably found that extremely frustrating, because the ARB has nothing in their pocket but a giant rubber stamp. So I would like to see us popularly elect the ARB to bring much more accountability to that system, and to give you, the people out there, much more faith in what's going on. So that's one of the things that I would do, a bill I would introduce or co-sponsor or try to work on. As far as what I would repeal, I would do everything I can to get rid of these silly, darned aerobic septic systems.
Republican Party who funded this event and allowed all of us to gather here tonight, and the Ellzey County Republican women who provided the refreshment. Without their support, this event wouldn't have been possible. So thank you, Dan, and the entire party. Also, please put on your calendar February 28th next week in Midlothian at the Midlothian Conference Center. 6:30 is our final in our 3 series to date.
We're gonna have twice as much seating.
It's twice as much seating, Dan promises. Closing remarks, TJ, would you start us off, please?
My name is TJ Fabby, lifelong resident of Ellis County, grew up in Red Oak, live in Waxahahie now, married with 2 children. My wife is back here in the back, Ashley. Been married to her for almost 10 years. And my 2 kids, Jordan and Jimmy, they like it when I mention their names. But we can all sit up here and tell you all kinds of things that make you smile and make you laugh and make you like us. And the fact is, you don't know what any of us is going to do when we get into that office. We could just be blowing smoke up your butt. Yeah? And so how do you gauge that? How do you gauge that? And I challenge all of you to look at our history. Look and see who has been fighting, who has been speaking out. For the last 6 years at least, I'm 32 years old, so give me a little credit. I did get active in the political arena relatively recently, but I'm not that old, so give me a little bit of credit. Most of my generation is not here tonight. But for the last 6 years, I've been very active. One of the founding members of the Tea Party movement in Ellis County. I've been very active in the Republican Party for the last 6 years. I helped to elect Dane Davis as our county chair, and I'm very proud of the work that he has done to make our party more relevant. I've been part of passing resolutions that would hold our elected officials accountable if they didn't vote a conservative vote. I've been a delegate to the state convention and helped to make our state party more conservative, more transparent. I've been a delegate to the national convention to try to, well, that was a lost cause. The national party is pretty screwed up. But I went, and I've been fighting, and I've been standing on these principles for 6 years, the same principles. I didn't just start this back in October or back in September. I've been saying the same things, fighting for the same things for the last 6 years. And I'll continue this fight because I've got 2 kids back there. And folks, we are losing this country. We're losing this state. Our founding fathers from the Alamo all the way to Fort Ticonderoga would be rolling over in their graves if they knew what we were allowing in this country. And we've got to get serious. This is not just another election. It's very important. Please send me to Austin so that I can fight to protect your liberty and reduce the size of government. Thank you.
I'd like to thank my wife and my family for putting up with this for so long. We got 2 weeks to go. Thanks for coming. And I'd like to thank my friend Dan Moran for coming up with Houston. My name's Ellzey. I've been serving our country since I was 18 years old. Now I'd like to serve this community and this district down to the state legislature. For 25 years, I've sworn an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The foreign ones are easy to find because they're shooting at you. But this administration, through the use of pen and fiat, has tried to take away a lot of the freedoms that are guaranteed to you in the U.S. Constitution. So my new mission, as I now see it, is to stop them, restore that which is yours, and ensure that this place, this district, these towns are an even better place to live, raise a family, and do business. So let me tell you what I believe. I believe in the power of prayer. I believe family, and country in that order. I believe in protecting the life of the unborn. I believe you have the right to arm and protect yourself and those that you love. And that gun control consists only of hitting your target. I believe your property is your property, and once it's paid for, it's yours, and nobody can take it from you. I believe the property tax should be phased out because it's unfair. I believe farmers and ranchers who own their land also own the water, no matter where it is on their land. On the top or on the bottom. People should be able to pray anytime, anywhere they want to, and that includes schools. And I'm glad that our children are able to say the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States and to Texas every day, but I believe they should do it in English as well. I believe that the margins tax is unfair and should go away as an impediment to business. I believe the TSA and the IRS have betrayed the trust of the American people, and we need to start from scratch. I believe government should do a few things, do them well, and other than that, stay out of our lives. I believe your personal information is your personal information. The only way anybody should be able to get a hold of that is with a warrant that they show to you at your front door. I believe I should have the right to choose which schools my children go to. I believe that those who educate your children at home are taking an extra strain, and you should not be penalized when it's time to go to a state university in Texas. I believe there should be more teachers and fewer administrators, and they should be better paid, and their pensions should be taken care of. I believe a $10,000 college degree is an attainable goal, and we should do that more here in Texas. I believe this administration has abrogated its constitutional authority to defend the border. We have a clear and present danger, and it's up to Texas to take care of it. I believe we have a moral obligation to take better care of our veterans here in Texas because the VA is failing, and we're going to do it on our own, especially those who come out here. My name's Jay. Let's roll.
Hi, I'm John Wray, and I'm from Waxahahie, Texas. I grew up here. I grew up in a very humble way. I grew up on the west side of I-35E in a trailer park called Oklahoma Estates. It's still there. I spent the first 8 years of my life living there. I attended Northside Elementary School. I attended Turner Middle School. I attended Wyoming Junior High. I attended Waxahahie High School. When I was 11 years old, my dad started a business. I would watch my mom and dad at night struggle through IRS forms and various publications trying to figure out how to make their business work and to make a go of it, and poring over the checkbook and figuring out how they were going to get the car fixed or how we were going to pay the electric bill. That's the way I grew up. I attended higher education here in the state of Texas, earning 2 degrees from Texas public institutions. When I was growing up, I had these 2 cousins, these 2 older cousins, and they liked to torment me a bit. And we had, down at my grandmother's house, we had a tree house, and it had a rope. It had a rope ladder with knots in it, and that's how we could climb up in the tree house. And they liked to get up in that tree house and pull that rope up, so that I couldn't get up there with them. I am not that kind of person. I'm running for this job because I want to make sure that that rope is hanging down for every Texan, and that every Texan can climb up in that tree house and enjoy everything that they want to achieve. That they can earn their way through self-reliance and through perseverance and through personal responsibility. They can achieve an education. They can start a business. They can better their family. They can provide for their future. They can provide for their retirement. I want to see that happen. I know how to do it. I'm the best candidate because I've climbed that rope. I know I'm not at the top, but I can tell you every knot below me has a little bit of my skin knuckles on it. And if you want somebody that knows how to preserve this Texas system, knows how to preserve it for you and your kids and your grandkids, please elect me, because I've been there and I've done it and I know how to protect it. Thank you.
My name is Burge. I started off with that, so I will too. One of the things that I'm least comfortable talking about is me. I've never been great at saying I'm great. I am gonna tell you a couple of things about me, just some biographical information. I was born and raised in Grand Prairie. I grew up in Grand Prairie. Went to Grand Prairie High School. I was a goat. 22 years ago, I married the love of my life, Dawn, and she's back here with me, wondering when this is all over. I am on the Midlothian School. I believe in public education. I'm an anachronism in this area, in this state, because I am a fiscally conservative Republican, and that's demonstrated in my record of 13 years and how I vote. You were there last night, you'd have seen how I voted. And yet I believe in public education. So I believe it is possible to be a fiscally conservative Republican and be pro-education. And I'm telling you, the Democrats have owned education for too darn long. Yes. It's time for Republicans to get involved in education. And if we don't do it, if we continue to let it be their argument, they're going to kill it, they're going to kill us. That was a soapbox there, wasn't it? I'm not the richest guy in the room. I'm not the richest guy here. I'm not the best dressed, probably not the best speaker. I'm just me. I have no desire to have another office other than this one right here. This isn't a stepping stone for me into some future glory and grandeur. I simply believe in serving. I believe in the servant leadership attitude. And I know that I have that. I know that I lay awake at nights wondering how we're going to solve a particular problem, or how we're going to accomplish this issue, or how we're going to take care of this person's problem. That's just me. I am one of you guys. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm just me. I would deeply and humbly request your support in this election for the Texas State House. Thank you.
We want to thank everyone for coming tonight, and candidates are going to be available for you to come up and meet with them and talk to them and ask them whatever you want. And sure you don't want to say anything about it?
Drive careful going home.
Thank you all for coming out tonight.